2, which is awesome, which is fun.
We just watched Secrets of the Dead, Lost Ships of Rome.
Gotta love PBS.
Yeah, we really do. You go.
Okay, so there is a team of marine archaeologists, again, who are trying to recover 3 little shipwrecks that they have off the coast of Venetante, which is this little
5.
Italian...
5.
There were 5 wrecks, but I think they only went to 3 of them.
Yeah.
They only went to a few of them. And it's this little tiny island, like right off the coast of Italy.
It's very cute.
It's adorable. It's actually like, engineering-wise, it's like actually seen to be really cool because the Romans, there's no fresh water on the island, but they paved a whole area, and then they had like chambers of like rainwater, and like they set out a whole really cool system.
Aqueduct system.
Yeah, aqueduct system. And the cool fun fact was that Emperor Augustus's daughter was imprisoned there for 5 years.
Yes.
And Zoe wants to tell that story.
I really do. Okay, so
Go.
I'll talk. Tess is gone, which is good because I can be even more scandalous. Julia is Emperor Augustus the First's daughter, and she was evidently a bit of a minx. And the famous story of Julia is that in the Senate Forum on the it's the platform where the important papers were signed, and Emperor Augustus had signed this paper outlawing adultery in the Roman Empire, which everyone took note of. Very, very serious proclamation. But Julia, Babette, goes ahead and sleeps with somebody on the platform where her father has just outlawed adultery.
We like this girl a lot.
Yeah.
She's fun. She's fantastic.
And so her father doesn't have her killed, which is nice of him, but he does outlaw her to the island where she's not allowed to have any wine or men, for that matter. So
imprisonment is a very loose term, I think. She's not allowed to leave, but like she has this beautiful villa overlooking the ocean. Like, I would like to be imprisoned here. Thanks.
Yeah. And I mean, she's clearly very well taken care of. Mm-hmm. The other story about Julia is that potentially she was not imprisoned for her adultery. She was imprisoned for plotting against her father.
A political scandal.
Yeah.
So.
And evidently, that sort of story would be just the sort of lie to justify banishing your daughter. So we hope she had some fun on the terrace. Yeah. But back to the sailing.
Ship focusing. They were covering these, what were they, amphora?
Yeah.
Amphorae? What was the plural? Amphorae. Anyway, there's these like ceramic jugs.
Yeah, they're clay.
And like depending on like the shape and the size, and like it's a really good time marker to figure out what time the ship sank at what point in history, because they like the designs changed over time, but there are these really cool ways. They're like barrels. Essentially, like that would be like the more Western equivalent. Mm-hmm. What like they were really cleverly designed, so like they had like a tipped side, like it would like become narrower, mm-hmm. and so they would stack really, really well inside of the ships, and so like you could have like a lot more cargo, and like they made for really good transport.
There was a really cool graphic of sort of what happened to the ship in a storm, and how a ship could sink that was carrying these amphorae, and sort of they were placed very tightly in the hull of the ship. And if some of them started to break due to sort of rough conditions, then sort of the placement of them all would sort of collapse, and they would all shift, and the weight would become heavier on one side, which leaves the ship very vulnerable if the wave comes over and rolls. Yep. And then you're dead.
Yeah, because several of the ships just went down in one piece, and they're like, "This is bizarre. What's going on here?" One broke, which, I mean, that leaves a lot more room for interpretation of what happened, but it's unlikely for a ship to sink in one piece unless you have like some sort of crack in the hull, or like anything just goes down.
I mean, I think really it was a testament almost to the diving involved more than the sailing, which we originally wanted to do, but both had to opt out of. because they're going down hundreds of feet. 320, I think, was the lower one, and the deepest one was about 500. Yeah, which is notable. 300 is like almost 3 times as deep as recreational divers are allowed to go, based on the sort of protocol there. So it's quite deep, and they said for the deepest one at 500 that for every minute they spent past like 8 minutes.
Past 10, I think it was 10 minutes.
They had to spend an hour waiting in the water to decompress. Yeah. So that was really interesting. I think it was so dark down there. It was the middle of the day. It was just like,
the divers were cool. The cool thing was the ancient
crazy
Roman divers.
Oh yeah,
because this island has this really famous port where it's not like you go out and it's a seawall kind of thing. The Romans carved it into the island, and so the first part was like hand carving out hundreds of tons of rock, and then like the last one they left a little strip, so like they just removed the strip and the seawater comes flooding in. But the strip is 10 feet below sea level is what you have to dig down to. And these are ancient Roman divers. They don't have oxygen tanks. They said they would breathe, go down, and chisel at it with a hammer. I'm just like, that must have taken, firstly, forever. And secondly, what a horrible job.
I hope they were paid well.
I hope they were paid very well.
I mean, it's hard to imagine them using slaves for this, because if I was a slave, I would just be like, fucking, I'm drowning myself. Or like, there's my hit, I'm coming back up.
And it's seawater. You can't see what you're doing. Yeah. And you can't open your eyes because that'll burn horribly.
I mean, it was really extremely impressive, and the extent that the Romans clearly, they had sort of the maps of their trade routes in the area and just around Greece and to Spain, and it was just
awesome.
Masters of the sea. I mean, it was really cool.
Oh, they did a lot of cooking.
That's true. Especially the garum. The garum?
Garum?
I don't know. Which is, okay, here's what they do. They take a pile of fish, they stick it in a bucket.
Salt?
With salt. The salt is important. And then they let the fish rot, and they let the skin fall apart, and the organs and the stomach acids burst out, and that delicious soup, after several days of sitting in the sun, is what garum is. And they said, sort of, that this ship full of amphorae filled with garum was worth like 600 million?
60 million? A lot of money.
Yeah, I think it was 60 million.
It was a lot of, but ship went down.
Much money.
Ouch.
Yeah. And it was also clear to what extent it's pretty rare for sort of in the developed world for shipwrecks to happen now. But it's clear it was just such a dangerous undertaking in ancient times. And I mean, for one thing, you don't have weather reports. Weather reports are nice. So is anything else?
Is anything else happening? There are mysterious metal cylinders at the bottom of this island that nobody knows what's up.
And they couldn't identify it. It was kind of a bummer because it wasn't like the weather conditions are like it's too dangerous of a site categorically for someone to go in. It's like, we've had 5 days here and now we have to leave. Sorry. So that would have been cool.
Yeah, it would have been.
But
they had to go. Sorry.
But it was very interesting. The divers were interesting characters.
Numero uno.
Yeah. Again, I actually enjoyed this one slightly more than the last documentary.
I think so too.
It was a little more vivid. So, is that everything?
I think that's it.
All right, Tess and Zoe out.
Bye. Mouse stuck.